tarde a todos. Boa noite para quem está em Portugal. É um prazer estarmos aqui novamente. Esse é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, juntamente com a Reitoria Digital da Universidade Federal de Goiás e a parceria da Mississippi State Universirity. Hoje nós temos uma convidada muito especial, que é a Jennifer Davis, e quem será entrevistadora será a doutora Rosângela Seba, chefe do Departamento de Piano da Mississippi State University. Seja bem-vinda, doutora Rosângela Seba. Thank you very much, Rose.
Thank you for inviting us. We are here today with our friend Jennifer Donohue Davis. Jennifer is on her 24th year as a music teacher, and she has developed the piano labs and advanced placement music theory in the public schools in Starkville, and works with department-wide musicals at all three campuses in Starkville, our town. It is a pleasure to have her here with us, and we're going to talk about education, music education in the United States, and maybe we can make a comparison, and I can help make a comparison. So welcome, Jennifer.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here, and it's an honor to be a part of this program.
Well, thank you for accepting our invitation. And thank you, Andrea, for making this opportunity for us. So today we're going to talk about music and music education in the United States, especially in public schools. But I would like to start with you in how you start your music education as a child.
Sure. Probably to know my story is to know my parents' story. My mother is a native of Japan, and my father is a native of Mississippi, and they met when my father was stationed in Japan. And they decided to get married and move to his hometown. It's a small town in North Mississippi. And I was a child, probably 4 or 5, and we were attending church, and a lady was playing the piano, and I tugged on my mother's shirt, and I said, I want to do that. And it's funny because now I still know the lady, and she's a good friend of mine, and she's probably an average pianist, but as a little girl, I thought it was the most amazing thing. And so my mother began looking for a local piano teacher, and I started taking piano lessons. And I also attended the local public school. And about 7th grade, I got the opportunity to be in our local band program, much like the marching band you see in the United States. And I played trumpet and French horn. But it was in 9th grade that the local choir director at the high school asked me to be the accompanist, the collaborative pianist for it. And it was not easy, and it was a lot to learn, but I'd been taking piano lessons all this time. And she coached me and helped me learn how to do that. So because of band and choir experiences and continuing to take piano experiences, I decided to major in music at college. I went to William Carey University in Hattiesburg, which is a smaller Baptist private school, but a great music program, and began teaching after that.
So tell me more about the opportunity that you had. So you were in band and choir, but you were also taking private lessons, piano lessons. But were you taking private trumpet and French horn lessons, or how does that work in the United States?
So in the United States, families can choose to have their children take lessons, and they just make arrangements privately. But the private lessons is something a particular family would choose to do. So for example, in our town in Starkville, there's many professors here, and I have students at Starkville High School that choose to take, for example, French horn lessons with the local French horn professor at Mississippi State. But my town was about 45 minutes away, and a very small rural farming community. So the local band director and choir director employed by the public school is really the only music teacher. We did have a very good piano teacher who taught privately in her home. And once a week I went, and my parents paid for those lessons, and I benefited. And that piano teacher, I will say, was also very active in organizations. So she was a part of MTNA and Bach Festival, and these provided hymn festivals, competitions, and opportunities for me to perform and be aware of piano camps and things growing up through the years. But that is private. But the other benefit of the public school with the band and choir, I only did my instrument, French horn and trumpet through the public school, and I was a part of the choir program from the public school perspective. And that is free to families because the local public school does provide that.
And that gave you opportunity also to be a collaborative pianist, which in private lessons, you wouldn't have that anyway, right?
That is true. And the other benefit is in southern states in particular, there's still an emphasis on being a part of a church family. And so you see a lot of local churches emphasizing musicians and encouraging younger teenagers that they'll see a talent and they kind of cultivate it and helped it. So I played piano at my church. In fact, I'll tell you, I was in 7th grade and another girl took piano lessons, and our local pastor asked us to play a hymn before Wednesday night prayer meeting. And I only knew one song and she only knew one song. And the congregation patiently put up with us for about 2 months until we learned another song. So I now realize that community let us learn how to be pianists in that area. It was a smaller church. And that's something I think that's unique in smaller American towns.
And that is true. That is very true. Can I ask what was the piano professor's name, that your private teacher?
Yes. So I had Miss Betty Stewart, and this is a bit typical, but her husband was the pastor of the local Baptist church, and she played piano and she would teach, but she was also classically trained at Mississippi College. Mm-hmm. And so she also taught us classical music and theory and music history. And that's why she entered us in these federated festivals and other opportunities that I didn't realize I needed until I became a part of it. So growing up, I learned how to play the techniques and the things that were a part of this system that we had.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to make a comparison because I'm also now part of those associations, and I'm teaching private students as well. For those listening to this interview, in the United States, as Jennifer explained, we do have private teachers, and they are part of associations that evaluate the students and give them an opportunity to compete. In Brazil, that would be close or similar to the conservatory programs that we had before. So there are a certain amount of things that we have to learn. And then at the end of the year, we would have recitals and we would have a jury or evaluation. So it's very kind of similar, but it's not attached to a school. It's more attached to the association that can be national, regional, and statewide, and then local. And I think that always encourages students to keep their technique, their sight reading skills, and the literature, the repertoire.
Yes, so I can say that I'm a product of all of those organizations. And this is silly of me, but I grew up in I mentioned my small town, but that meant I got to go to a big city and we get to go to the mall after I competed. And so it's so funny, but from a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old's perspective, it opened my mind to much bigger things. It's a little silly, but also it was an opportunity to meet other pianists in the state. And that was good for me.
So again, let me explain this a little bit more for those who are not used to the system. The evaluations are usually in a center city, more in the middle of the state. So small town students and professors will go to that place, and once or twice a year, they will be evaluated. And then the ones that reach a certain amount of grade, then they compete, and then they are receiving medals, and they also have opportunities to play in recitals, and it's in a concert hall, in a university or a church. So that's the opportunity of going to the mall or going to a nice restaurant and spending the day there. I do that also with my students, and I think they all get mesmerized by being in a different place. So how did you come to a point where you said, I am going to be a music teacher?
So I think I really did always love the competition and the recital side of the music. I also loved playing piano and I loved making music, but and in band and choir, they have these opportunities as well. And so I would go to what we would call an all-state choir, and there are people from all over the area, and I'd meet other musicians. And the idea of music creating a community. I just was really mesmerized by this concept that we can be from very different areas and very different socioeconomic and cultural, even silly teenage things were different kinds of people, but music would bring us together. And so I was always fascinated by this idea. And probably, I'll confess, I realize now I've always had the heart of a teacher. So the little girl that gets the teddy bears and pretends to teach, that was probably my personality. And so I've always enjoyed the challenge of seeing a student from point A and getting them to the next level of musicianship. And so I was probably about a senior in high school, and and we were trying to decide, what am I going to major in? And sometimes you want to major in the things that will make money. And I'll never forget, my father said, he said, "You really are a teacher at heart." And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that, because that's not a glamorous job. But he asked the right questions that really prodded my reality of, yes, I love connecting with people, using music as a tool to teach life. And so for me, when I started college, I knew I wanted to be a public school music teacher in particular, because it gives you an opportunity to connect with people who may not have the resources to do these private lessons. So that's something that's very unique.
Yeah, and again, let me compare. We have people from Europe, we have people in Brazil, in South America. And the South America education system is based on European education system, which is the conservatories. And there is a misconception that the conservatories are very elitist, and it's not. In Brazil, for example, I can speak, and as well as some of the South Americans, they have pretty much lessons are free, or if you prove that you cannot even pay the entrance fee, which is probably $50 to $100 for the entire year, they waive that. And so the music teachers are employed by the state or by the federal government. So it's still a public school, but it's specific for music. So they go after school. And schools in Brazil are in the morning or in the afternoon. Or so those who are in the afternoon, middle school will go in the morning, and those who are in high school in the morning go in the afternoon. And after evenings, we offer also for adults. And so they're also an opportunity. So I do believe that the United States put all of that education in the public school system, which allows musicians to be employed by the government as well, but also allow everybody to have that opportunity. So just so people can understand the differences. Yes. So you just kind of already answered my question with your career objective, but can you explain, once you make the decision to be a teacher because you wanted to give a life experience through teaching to the students, but what was the option of a degree? Because it wasn't a performance, it wasn't. So what was your option in degrees?
Yes. So for me, I pursued the vocal and piano music education degree so that I can receive my teacher's license, so that I could be employed in the public school system. And I think that was very important to me, because I wanted that opportunity to connect with the general community. So I got my training at William Carey in Hattiesburg. My piano professors were Dr. Teresa Sanchez and Dr. Martin Cuellar. But I wanted to also be a good choir director. And so I spent a lot of energy on my vocal concentration as well. So Dr. Connie Roberts is my voice professor, a lot of time in conducting. My student teaching was with the with 7th through 12th grade choirs. And so I wanted to get the degree that would give me that type of job. So that was very important to me.
So can you explain a little bit of, you're saying all those names, I know them all. They are all my colleagues when I was in Hattiesburg at the time. Yes. Can you explain to us, what is the student teaching? What is that?
Yes. So a portion of your degree at the end. So traditionally, if a college student is in 4 years, it would be the last semester. Although I will admit the music degree is a little more intense, so it tends to go a little longer, 4.5 or 5 years. And they spend 18 weeks with a public school teacher. And so for Mississippi State, they want you to spend 9 weeks with an elementary teacher. That might be a teacher that does K through 6th grade, and then 9 weeks with a secondary teacher, 7th through 12th grade. And so in the United States, there tends to be, you're a music teacher, but also you have a concentration. So instrumental or orchestra, instrumental tends to be more the marching band type and concert band style. Orchestra, of course, the strings emphasis, and then choral, the vocal emphasis. And then the pianists tend to be choral or instrumental. And so now that I live, that I teach here in Starkville and I'm local to Mississippi State, I have the benefit of working with what we call student teachers or interns. And so I'm training the teachers before they get their license. And that is such a fun challenge for me. I've been in Starkville now 4 years, because it's healthy for me to see the energy and the excitement of these college students, but also they ask questions that force me to evaluate, why am I teaching it this way? And what am I doing? And what is my philosophy? And so it keeps me fresh and challenges me. But what it also does is build a relationship, so that when they get their first job 6 months from now, they can call and ask these questions, because they're so overwhelmed by everything when they come with us. They come prepared, but the reality is nothing prepares you to learn how to teach except teaching. And so after they've been in their new job in their new city or whatever, now they're ready to say, tell me again how we did this, and we can talk through it. So I enjoy building those relationships.
And also, I read a quote the other day that was very interesting, because the quote said, the survivors will not be the ones that are strong and smart, but the ones that can adapt. Because when you are teaching, you are going to adapt according to the community that you have, the resources that you have, and the students that you have. And so the adaptation also takes time. And because of that, it's important to have the connection with other teachers in case you encounter a situation that you don't know how to resolve the problem.
That is very true. So almost every school district will hire a music teacher, but then what's the next step? Do they have instruments? Do they have a good room? Do they have resources? Or is it just you and you have to be creative? And so that is so true. And of course, like everything else, teaching public school during the pandemic has been a whole nother layer of challenges and opportunities that we've learned. So I agree. Your best resources are other teachers. That's so true.
Let me ask you a question. And this is something that I learned after I became a full-time teacher. I've been teaching since I'm 17 years old. And that was through the private schools, music schools, and conservatory. I was a full-time professor by 18 years old. And you never know what you're going to have, right? As we were talking about adaptation. But as the time goes by, I have one goal, which is change the life of the students that come to me in a way or the other somehow. What is your objective in teaching music?
So I think for me, I definitely can relate to what you say. And I think we music teachers, this is not unusual, but for me, I like to teach life skills through music. So music's the tool to teach discipline, kindness, understanding other cultures. When we sing songs in other languages, it's an opportunity to talk about how music's a part of their culture and to relate. And so for me, that's really important. And I also emphasize a lot of music literacy. And what I find is as the students honestly can sight sing better, they become more confident in themselves. And I see that transferring to other classes as well. And so I think that, like you say, the idea that you're building better people through music, I think is so important, that you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that, and I think maybe it just comes along with the feeling of being musicians. We love this. We're a part of an incredible culture, and historically of these great musicians, and teaching them this whole world, I think has been a fun challenge for me.
Since you are in a public school and you see students also in other classes, can you compare the development of a student that takes music in other classes and the comparison of a student that does not take music in the same classes?
Sure. So one of the things that's really important in public school in the United States is every child needs to graduate. And so we want to make sure they earn their diploma. And also in American culture, the students are here through 12th grade. And so some students would go on and do what we would call blue collar type work, or they may not do college, but they still need to have an experience of learning and growing. And so this idea of where they're at and getting them better to the next level, what I traditionally in American schools, your band and choir will have 10% of your enrollment. So Starkville High School has about 1,000 students in grades 10th, 11th, and 12th. And so I have about 95 choir students this year. And the band also has about the same numbers. And when you include our 9th grade, I think the band marches are 9th through 12th. And so they're marching about 140. And with my 9th through 12th, it's about 140, 150. And so with our teachers, when I go, for example, in an English classroom, the other teachers will say, well, that's a band kid or that's a choir kid. And so that identity is kind of casual, they're a part of something, but also I find that they're a little more disciplined, that they understand the need to come to school. Hopefully they're learning to be respectful. And then the opposite's true. If I have a choir student that I see that they're not doing well in their math grades or whatever, I'm a little nosy and I walk over and I check. And so there's a little bit of a support that the teachers feel as well. And I think that's really important because in American public education, the goal is that everyone gets the diploma and graduates. And so I have always taught in school districts where not everyone is upper middle class. It is a variety. And so you want to make sure every student gets the opportunity to be successful at the next level. And so there's a little bit more to what we are doing than just the notes and the theory and the rhythm. And so the phrase you hear in American culture is, American education is social emotional learning, teaching them how to adapt and how to handle maybe the stressors that they're dealing with. And so I think musicians, we know as musicians, we know that you have to build that to be successful, but then the students are also learning that, and that it influences their other classes.
Do you believe that music gives resilience?
Builds up your... Well, it's a little silly, but these trophies behind me are a part of our, in choral music, our state organizations and our competitions. And so the joke is, Miss Davis in contest mode, we must sing well, we must do well, we must work hard. And so, but also there's a challenge of make you realize you're better than you realize that you could be. And so as we challenge them to work harder and do better, yes, that resilience. And so my students who've been in choir more than 1 year, they laughed like, oh yeah, you're going to do this and you're going to do it well because she just won't let you not do it. So yeah, that resilience of just working hard. I don't know how well all my students could verbalize that they do it, but they also know that we will be successful and we will perform because there's never an attitude of failure. There's a what can we do together to make you better. And so I think that's really important that I need to build as a choir director, but I do think it comes from the music culture.
And that's the community that you want to build and the inclusion. So everybody is invited to be part of a group. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I really, it's wonderful hearing that. And I have here a performance of your group, and we're going to listen to this right now, and then we're going to talk about what you've done and with whom. Okay. This is an ensemble, I think it was done in September, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a video of the choir with the Mississippi State Choir as well. I think they are trying to put the video in.
Sure. Yes.
All right. So Jennifer, tell us more about what just happened.
Sure. So this is an event sponsored by Mississippi State University. It's called the Choral Colloquium, and your colleague, Dr. Gary Packwood, invites local high schools and junior highs. And in 2 days, we bring in a guest clinician. They teach the students music, and they do a performance within 2 days. And it does several things. One, it gets students on the university campuses because, again, we want them to realize the next level, the things they can do at the next level. Number two, it gives them a chance to work with a guest clinician. And the gentleman conducting here is Dr. Jeffrey Murdoch. He is the choir director at University of Arkansas, and he is a recent Grammy Award winner for a Grammy Music Educator Award. And that is an incredibly high honor in the United States. It is very hard to get chosen and then to be the finalist and then to actually be the title. And so he won that, I believe, in 2020. And he's just wonderful and gracious. The song they're doing is Shosholosa, and I believe that is a piece from South Africa. Of those students, I think I'm looking at about 250, about 70 are mine. We're the local high school, so we got as many of our kids over there as possible. But what my students, I emphasize, is meet students from other areas. So our neighborhood, other towns, other communities. And I think they really enjoyed that, again, making music together in a group setting. Also, you see that we're singing behind masks, so that's still a reality, but at least we're able to sing together. So we're very, very grateful that was able to happen. And so it's been interesting seeing my students become a part of that. So those are my students are a part of also many students in the North Mississippi area.
Okay, so can you tell me, they did not see the music before?
Oh, that is correct. So they come to sometimes we have a system called the All-State Honor Choir, where I prepare them and teach them the music, and then they come in and the clinician refines it, makes it better. But in this setting, that is not the case. I just bring them, and the conductor teaches all of this within a 24-hour time. And so that's a challenge because you want to have a clinician that can handle that. And of course, Dr. Murdoch was fabulous. My students just loved him. Dr. Murdoch is also a native of Mississippi and also benefited. He is a perfect example of someone who played gospel music in his church. So he played by ear beautifully. And then he learned how to read music in his public school. He had a choir director that was a good teacher, and she got him up. Honestly, I don't know if you know, but he is a graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi.
Yes.
And so he was able to build. And so I think that's a unique skill if you can play by ear and also read music. I have a lot of students that play gospel as well. And so when I can teach them how to read music, I almost am jealous because now they're more advanced than me because I only I've been trained academically to read the music, but improv is not a part of my heritage at all. I wish it were. So Dr. Murdoch is a wonderful teacher. And next year, when we go to the Mississippi State Colloquium, there will be a different clinician who also has that challenge. But there are many conductors in the nation that are very good at that.
And I think also it's an opportunity for students to know that they can make a career in music.
Yes.
It's not only the selected ones, that are able to do so. I think there is a misconception in music that talent will lead you to success, and just a few of them are talented enough to do that. I think most of us that have been teaching for a while know that 90% of the time it's hard work. Yes. And the talent is the 10% that may kick you a notch or two. But having clinicians that are from the state, had a diverse background, also kind of encourage them to see that they can also have this opportunity. It's a good thing to do.
Yes, now, and also in the United States, I want to mention also we many universities offer scholarships for singing and scholarships for playing your instruments. And so this is important because many of my students need the scholarships to help pay for school. And so I encourage my students to apply and audition at several schools, and they as a family decide what's best for them. And so I think that's also important, is that we see that the universities are investing back in these students as they pursue their degrees. I'm very grateful for that.
I think I can speak a little bit more about that as well. We have to raise money and funds and find people that can donate for scholarships, but also for the instrument or voice that they are being selected for service scholarships, but also there's the academic scholarships,
Yes.
which if they have really good grades in high school and the ACT, SAT, they can also receive academic scholarships, and Mississippi State offers the opportunity to stack the scholarships. So by the end, they decide what is best for the family and financially what they can do. All right. Well, let me ask you this. What did piano, because this is an interview, the piano in its perspective,
Yes.
what piano is helping you now as a choral director?
Yes. So two thoughts. One is I realized in my teaching at my former school and here, we would have students that would leave my program and want to be a music major, and they didn't quite have the background that they needed to be successful. And so we found that when we added piano lab as an option at the high school, and when we added AP music theory, so a student could be in band or choir or both, take a couple of piano class, or take piano maybe once or twice their high school years, and then take music theory. And it's called advanced placement music theory, which I know is another system that's pretty big deal in the United States, the advanced placement system. Then my students could attend a university as a music major or minor and be much more successful. And so for me, the piano lab is very important, and the theory classes, because it provides equity. So then although I benefited from a private piano teacher, not every one of my families in this area can. And so providing piano lab at the public school does that for them. The other side, and we can also address again later, is for me personally, my piano background has been a huge help in preparing me as a better choral conductor and choral director. And understanding, to me, the piano really is the basis of music, of course. And so I realize I have a beautiful advantage because of my years of piano lessons in teaching choral music. So that's why there's a little bit of both and in my teaching philosophy and how I build programs.
All right. So let me explain this a little bit for those who are also comparing their education in other in other countries. We do have in conservatories, students take theory as part of the curriculum. Okay, so they would select their instrument or voice and then take theory. And so by the time you finish the first year of conservatory, everybody knows a certain amount of theory, and that builds up. What we call also ear training here is what we call in other countries dictation and solfeggio or solfege. So, and we also have fixed do instead of movable do. So in the United States, they decided to implement the AP theory, which is a theory education, basic music theory, as well as the piano labs, which it makes you functional. And I want to talk about that. You have done a tremendous job and an amazing job in acquire funds and secure funds to buy electric pianos, keyboards for the public schools, not only for your school, but for other schools as well. And you are helping establish piano labs in the region, as well as the AP theory. So let's put the AP theory aside for a second, and let's talk about the piano labs and how you secure the funds, because this is something that you didn't learn in your undergrad, how to secure funds.
The things they don't teach you.
Piano lab. Yeah, there you go. All right. Now let's talk more about this project.
Sure. So I will begin by saying I had the benefit of getting a piano lab at my former school. There's a town about 2 hours from here named Meridian, and Meridian High School. That piano lab was a part of a technology grant. And so this is a little bit of me, honestly, just talking a lot about it, just bothering people, talking to my administrators, telling them my dreams and visions. And in that scenario, this was about 15 years ago, they were applying for a grant to add more technology in the classroom. And so the grant, I will tell you, was a huge grant. And I was just a tiny line item in the grant, and talked about how we could add the technology of piano labs, and it would enhance it, and did the defense for that. And so I got to be a part of that element. So that was the way we were able to do it at that former school.
And how did you write the grant? Who wrote the grant?
Okay, yes. So at that school district, another person's job was to be a grant writer. And so I had to provide them the information and communication, but I was not the final person to write that. And I will admit, in the United States, grant writing is a very intense process, and it's quite a bit of work because it is a way of holding accountable. Are we spending the money correctly? And so it has a good perspective behind it. But I admit, if you're the one writing the grant, it's quite a bit of work. So it was my job to provide our demographics, to prove how we think it could be beneficial, to show the technology element, because the grant was specifically a technology grant. And so we were able to be a part of that. This same grant gave every teacher computers and every teacher projectors and document cameras. And this would have been about 2006, 2007. So that, but again, because I had been saying, I want a piano lab, someone heard me and said, hey, this is going on over here. Maybe you should talk. And so I was able to jump on and be a part of a much larger grant. Now in Starkville, when I took the job 4 years ago, I said, our next step is to add a piano lab. We need to add a piano lab. And so the idea is, you see it in the camera, you see in that video, you walk in a room and there's 16 keyboards, they have on headsets, and the teacher can speak to the whole class, or they can speak to small groups or individual. So teaching piano lab, it feels very different than one-on-one teaching, and also teaching in a public school setting. We do not have any requirements. There's no audition. Anyone in the student body can sign up for this class. So the teacher will find
no background.
No background. Correct. That is correct. And so you have 16 keyboards. By 3 weeks, you have 16 levels. And so how do you teach that and facilitate that is a unique challenge for the teacher in that room. But at Starkville Public, I spoke with the principal and had mentioned this multiple times, and you do it in a way where you're not bothering them, but also you're trying to help them and say, okay, just keep this in mind. And so we, the principal helped us find the funding for that through his budget within the school district. So Starkville's high school's budget paid for the piano lab. So we paid for that, what I would call in-house. We have a 6th and 7th grade campus that is on Mississippi State's property. It's the Partnership Middle School. And if I am correct, it is the only public school on a university campus in the nation. And so there are other schools on other university campuses, but maybe they're application based, or they're Montessori schools, they're specific styles, or they are selection only. And this campus at Mississippi State, every student in the city of Starkville and our county attends the 6th and 7th grade campus. And so
may I interrupt just for a second?
Yes,
for those who are not used to this, the university has land within the university, and they build a building where the 6th and 7th graders will attend on campus their own school. And that is an opportunity for our students, university students and faculty, to observe, to give opportunity for our students to teach, as well as give support to that level of teaching. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, and it's very unique. I mean, I the more I learn about it, the more I realize it's just such an incredible gift. And so when the architects built this building, you walk in the halls and there's glass walls, and you can put on a headset and you can push a button to hear what's happening in each room. So it is a lab. You're watching and learning and growing, and the professors are working with the teachers and building that connection. So I will be honest with you, Dr. Saba, this one was a beautiful surprise because of the pandemic. It's not what we wanted, but it's the circumstances we found ourselves. Starkville MSU Symphony is a local organization of musicians that play in the symphony, and the board of trustees said, we are not able to have as many concerts as we normally would, but we want to give back to the community. And 2 board members started asking me questions. What do you need? What would be good? And I said, well, a piano lab would be great. And I said, and I gave some other options. My elementary music teachers have ORF instruments, and they're very fortunate because in the past, the local arts council has given small grants and they benefited from it. And so when I mentioned a piano lab for 6th and 7th graders, that every student could have the opportunity to take piano if they wanted, the symphony was very gracious, and they made the donation for that. And that was a beautiful surprise that I will tell you I had not worked for, because I'd spent so much energy working on the high school's piano lab that so now we are working and training that music teacher so they can incorporate piano, because this is a voice music education major who did take good piano and who learned their piano skills, but I would not have called them a traditional pianist. And so how do you teach a group of students piano? It's probably a lot of basic and fundamentals, and back to, teaching proper technique and healthy skills. And as we build on it, when they get in 10th grade, that piano lab is run by a piano teacher who has, your student, Dr. Saba, who has a bachelor's and master's in piano.
Yes. And so this is something also that music education in the United States make it available to every student that is going to be a music educator. They have to take piano labs because of situations like that. Or what if you are a conductor and you need to play something at the piano and you don't have a pianist? So you will make yourself the pianist and the conductor at the same time. I think what you are doing is providing the basic knowledge of music for everybody in the region that maybe in the future they decided to be a musician. I must say that music has changed many lives and given several opportunities to a lot of students that may not have had if they were in other fields. And what you're doing is changing people's lives and giving them an opportunity to succeed. So I really appreciate all the work you've done. And that speaks highly of your intelligence and your capability as a teacher. But beyond that is your idea of inclusion and make it the community stronger through music. So I really appreciate that. Now, here comes the question that how do you balance? Because a public school teacher, you are what is your schedule weekly?
Well, yes. So I've been teaching public school for 24 years, and I've always been a secondary choral director. So for many years, for about 15, I was in charge of 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. We'd call middle school, junior high. And really, I've only been in charge of the head director, 10th through 12th, for the last maybe 8 or 9 years. And so I, like most public school teachers, I am usually on duty by 8 o'clock, and the students are getting off the buses and they're getting in cars. And then we have a schedule where they go to this teacher for one period. And so they're managing that and figuring out, they have their schedule. And then I teach classes all day, and I'm with students all day long until about 4 o'clock. Many choir directors and band directors will do after school activities. Our piano teacher is starting to do piano ensembles or piano clubs. Occasionally, we're starting to slowly build a culture of piano as well. And so that's a little bit of my choice of how active I want my programs to be. But we also have rehearsal time in the school day as well. And I mentioned my theory class, I have that. My piano teacher, he teaches piano most of the day, and then he has one choir period with me because he's also my collaborative pianist, so he can practice he can be a part of the choir experience as well. So a public school teacher usually is full-time. On paper, it's 40 hours a week, but like most teachers, you find yourself doing far more because you're just maybe a hair too passionate. And I confess that the American term, I'm probably a workaholic. And so it's not very healthy, but my family is very supportive. And of course they are active. We have 2 children and they're active in their activities as well through the years. And so we've encouraged that as well. They took piano lessons because that was important to my husband and I. And so music's been a part of their lives as well. So my day is pretty full. I'm probably working 9 or 10 hours a day. And so a lot of it is music, score study, picking out repertoire, evaluating pedagogy. And then a lot of it's not, like sizing for tuxedos and dresses and fundraising and talking to the principals and figuring out these things. And so, I joke that like you say, maybe our undergrads didn't always prepare you for all of that. But I think I've now decided they tried. I just wasn't listening. So, there's so many things that you do because you're managing a program as well. And so, so that's probably a unique element that's different than just me teaching repertoire and me working on the music itself.
So, what is your advice for a young musician that wants to pursue a career in music?
So I think you are finding local mentors that you respect. And so Dr. Saba, we both know Teresa Sanchez, and I knew Dr. Sanchez as a child from these state events. And so I found myself asking her questions about her private studio, and then, meeting, it's a willingness to learn from those who are experienced and mature. And so I have found with the young teachers I work with, so many of them honestly have the right attitude of teach me, how can I get better? What can I do? And I'll be bold. Only once or twice have I had a young teacher graduate with their teacher's license and they don't need my help until 6 months later. And they're like, okay, how do I do this? And it's not that I want them to fail, but also I realize I can only give advice when they're ready. And so if you're the young teacher, take the advice, ask the questions. Experienced teachers want to help the next generation because we want to continue music education. But also we don't want to I don't want to be too pushy. I want them to want the information. And so I think I benefited from teachers that helped me. And I think it's important for me to do that for the next generation of teachers.
And what would be the background that they need to have? And now we're talking about knowledge, not only the willingness to ask for help and learn, but what knowledge, musical knowledge, do they need to have?
Yes, so in the United States, the Bachelor of Music Education program that is approved by National Association of Schools of Music, this degree plan is very critical and very important because your music knowledge needs to be second nature so that you can have the emotional energy to deal with the student who will not behave, the parent who is upset about something, the administrator who's asking you to fill out paperwork. And so you should be very comfortable in your theory and your conducting and your I don't know that everyone has to be a master pianist to be a good choir director, but you better know, like you say, enough to play a part, enough to use the solfege to figure out what's happening musically. And so, because if you're not comfortable in your pedagogy, then you're going to really struggle balancing both. So it is very much know your pedagogy and also know the other elements of education that are incredibly important.
So you just mentioned something that is quite critical, which is dealing with students' behavior and dealing with the family. What is usually the procedure to deal with those problems that you have? You may have every day or you may have once in a while, but
Sure.
What is the regular procedure?
And I think this is something that is unique about American Music Ed. So because anybody can take the class, there's no, I have 3 choirs, my treble choir, my tenor bass, and that's anyone who wants to be in that class can be in that class. And then my advanced choir is chamber, and there is an audition, but it doesn't mean that they can be in any choir, but my advanced choir, my chamber choir, it is the more they're more disciplined because they had to audition, and there's a little bit of because they want to do it, they'll work harder. And so I find myself, musically, they sing more advanced repertoire. There's more required of them to teach on their own. But my varsity classes, my regular choirs, they come at me at different levels. And so, so a lot of my philosophy of discipline and classroom management is that if the student doesn't care what you know until they know that you care. And so it's important to me that I connect with the students in a healthy relationship, that I know their names, that I know a little bit about them. And it's even things like, what's your favorite song? I understand the music that they like. I don't have to love it and listen to it, but if I know where they're coming from, then I can connect them. There's no way I can teach them the Vivaldi Gloria if we have not understood what they like. And then I try and build these connections. And so for me, it's healthy relationships with students is really critical in building that program. There's a blog called Smart Classroom Management. And there's so many of these that exist on the internet. But that one, for me, Smart Classroom Management by Michael Linson, is not music specific, although he does have a book for elementary music teachers. I apologize. But it is about how to manage students, how to understand how to handle that. So very clear procedures. When you come in the classroom, this is the way we run class. This is our routines. Here's what we do. And then I'll try and pay attention if a student's having a bad day or whatever. I want to talk to them and just say, are you okay? Do you need the nurse? What do you need? And so sometimes they just need for me to acknowledge them and to speak to them. And so that social emotional element of what we do in public school is really critical. It's probably also what's draining to my young teachers, is learning how to manage the people and how to work with them. Because I would not say that I'm super strict, but I joke that I've tricked them into working hard. And so it's very relationship driven. It's very fast paced. My rehearsals are really, really, we get a lot done in a quick amount of time, but then also I'm trying to be sensitive to what their situation would be. There's never a day where they don't sing because they don't feel like it. I just go, goodness, I'm sorry you're struggling, but you still got to sing, so we're still working and we're still doing, but sometimes a little sympathy can go a long way.
So you're talking about your fast pace. Explain to me what would be your class planning or your plan for the day?
So I can do choir and I can do piano, group piano as well, because I taught piano lab for many years at my former school. So in choir, they're coming in. There's no chairs here because we stand. We sing most rehearsals. So we're immediately warming up and vocalizing. And if I've planned a good lesson, a rehearsal plan, I've got warm-ups that match the repertoire we're doing. I'm strategizing that on this song, I'm going to do these measures and I'm going to do this. And my teaching philosophy is we learn in solfege before we move to words. That's something that's important to me. One, I think it builds music literacy. And number two, I can work, the solfege is the vowels. And I think that's important before we add the text. And so so we'll warm up. We do a little sight reading portion. Whatever I think their next step is in the scaffolding of their learning on sight reading. And then we work on our repertoire. And the repertoire is usually what's the next performance. And so the choir that I conduct here, the choirs are performance driven. So in the course of a school, we will probably have done, honestly, about 40 events. Now, that's not one child doing all 40, but that's 3 different choirs doing different things. And so we have a huge December concert. We sang for colloquium. There's all these things that were happening. And so we're constantly aiming for the next event. In the United States, we have Veterans Day coming up on November 11th. So we're preparing for a Veterans Day performance. And so there's always something to work toward. But in the course of that, I'm also making sure I mentioned the music literacy, vocally, they're building their skills, singing and getting better in tone quality and all of that as well. And so we're moving very fast. I'm very lucky because in my job, I have an assistant director who's a Mississippi State alum. And we've already mentioned my piano teacher, Mr. Smith. So sometimes we'll do sectionals. The altos will go with Miss Durham, or, you know, and I have that benefit where they can split up and then we can come together. But when it was just me and I was the only teacher, I trained students. And so, they never left my room because, you know, it's very, in America, we want to make sure we're seeing all the students, they're all safe. But I would have a circle of the altos being led by a student leader and a circle of the tenors practicing the solfege and singing. But that takes some time to build that. And so you're constantly thinking about what's the next step to make them better musicians.
And how do you select the repertoire? Do you go by the events? Or do you have a repertoire that you must have, or how do you select that?
Sure. Some things are chosen for me. So when we do all state, the clinician has chosen the music and I prepare it. Competition, I can choose from a list of pieces. And it's a huge list, so it's not a problem. And then some are seasonal. So in December, holiday pieces, winter, Christmas, Hanukkah, this kind of music. And for me, I like to do a variety of things. So, you know, academically, compound meter, simple meter, different keys, but then also culturally, other languages, different regions, historically, I need to bring in a classical piece. So there's kind of these puzzles that fit in that are unique. So my co-director and I, we will each conduct a song with each choir. And so she has chosen a very fun minor 4/4 a cappella piece. So in my head, I now need to find a major 6/8 accompanied piece, you know, and maybe from another culture. And so now I'm trying to do a contrast between the two. One, it makes the music sound more interesting. And number two, it gives me an opportunity to teach something a little different. Mm-hmm. So the repertoire, and then sometimes I just pick it because it's fun and I like it, which, you know, or this year my tenors are very strong, or I don't have my sopranos don't sing very high. So I need to think about that. And to keep it interesting to me, I try not to repeat repertoire, because goodness, just like anything, just like piano, there's so much music out there. It challenges me to find new music and to learn. And I spend a lot of my time picking out repertoire because the right song for the right group will really build them. And so knowing that balance. So I mentioned my varsity choirs, you know, they're not as advanced as chamber, so they have easier music, but also they need to feel like it's special, like it's music that they can relate to. Text, the words, it's very important to me that the words are good poetry. This is a good time. We'll find music with the words by Langston Hughes, Emily Dickinson, and I think it's important to talk about text. So I think that's also a factor.
Well, I think we can talk one more hour about music education and all that you have been doing. And I don't have words to thank you for participating in this interview. You have brought to light a lot of the questions that a lot of people have about music education in the United States. And you were very clear about everything. So thank you very much, Jennifer, for all the work you've been doing in our region, in our town. And I appreciate your leadership with our alums, which is Mr. Smith and now Mrs. Durham. And I know her as Jordan. But anyway, I really appreciate everything you've done in the development of music in the public school system in the United States and participating in this interview. Thank you very much.
It was an honor, and I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Yes, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your music career and your experience that are so important and inspiring to our students and the general public. Congratulations, Rose, also. Your interventions were significant and fundamental for us to know the work of Dr. Davis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muito obrigada a todos vocês que estiveram conosco nessa tarde. Foi uma tarde muito musical, na verdade. A experiência da doutora Davis é inspiradora. Esse projeto, o Piano e Suas Perspectivas, é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, da Reitoria Digital da Universidade Federal de Goiás e a parceria da Mississippi State University com apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, do Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, do Centro de Estudos Brasileiros, da Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. Fazem parte da equipe do programa, além de mim, a Maria Carolina Porto, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yasbeck Seba, Sérgio de Paiva e Wesley de Menezes. Muito obrigada a todos vocês pela audiência. The Piano in its Perspectives is a program of the School of Musical and Performing Arts, Digital Department of the Federal University of Goiás and Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Rádio Universitária, and Rádio Brasil Central. Besides me, Maria Carolina Porto, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Yasbeck Seba, Sérgio de Paiva, and Wesley de Menezes are part of the program's team. Thanks so much to all of you for the audience. See you next week. Nós aguardamos todos vocês na próxima semana. Muito obrigada pela presença.